Hello. Yeah, I want to say thanks to Will for introducing me, and then thanks also to Jennifer Hale, our legendary Commander Shepard, for giving me an intro as well. I didn't imagine how awkward it was going to be just stood here whilst that played in front of all of you, just kicking my heels. I've got a lot of information to get over to all of you in a very short period of time. I'm going to talk quite fast. I will try and slow myself down, but if I end up just like rattling stuff out, there will be time at the end where you can ask me some questions to find out specific things. And I am also doing the one-to-ones from 3 till 5 as well. So if you end up with specific questions, you can come to me then and just ask me whatever you want to do with specific things there. So the talk I'm doing today has two kind of parts to it. The first part is about voice acting itself for people who are thinking about becoming voice actors, people who are already voice actors and wanting to go further with their career. The second half of what I want to talk about today is to do with game developers, about how to find voice actors, how to direct voice actors, cast voice actors, and go on from there as well. So, but you will find that obviously, things that are relevant to voice actors are often very relevant to casting directors as well. So there's a lot of bleed through from one thing to another. We will start by looking at what voice actors need to do initially, how to get started in voice acting. Practice, practice, practice is something you will have heard over and over again. Practicing either with friends, with family, even on your own. My goal is if anybody's thinking about becoming a voice actor, coming away from this talk today, you will go back to your hotel room or go back home, whip out a phone if that's the only thing you've got to record on, and read the back of your shower bottle or a leaflet or a menu or whatever, and just start your practice of being a voice actor today. Because why not start today? Why not actually just get started and begin recording yourself? They say it takes 10,000 hours to master any skill. The idea that you can just sit and practice over and over and over again in order to develop an ability. I'm not saying it's if you do voice acting for 10,000 hours, you'll suddenly become a master voice actor, but it will certainly help you along on that journey. One thing about practicing and doing it every single day is it makes it habitual. It means that when you want to become a voice actor and you're getting up in the morning and going, do I have the energy for this today? If it's habitual, you'll just get up and do it. It's removing those barriers to starting that part of your workday, to starting that part of becoming a voice actor and just doing the job. The more barriers you can remove, things like having your setup ready to go, having your files ready to go, having the copy of whatever you're reading for that day ready to go, it's all really useful. In addition to that, I think it's also worth having a goal in mind, something to set yourself as a goal for when you get started. So when I talk about practicing, a lot of people think, okay, practicing, but what am I practicing for? So I'll recommend doing things like if you have children, or if you have nieces and nephews, or if you've got friends with children of their own, or if you've got elderly relatives, why not start reading them bedtime stories, just a chapter at a time? Just read something every single day. The parents will love you for it, because it means they don't need to read their child a bedtime story. You're taking care of that for them. And also means that that child gets to hear your voice and you have some impact on their life, or that elderly person who wants some impact in your life and have some connection with you, you get some of that as well. It doesn't have to be specifically like that, but something like that can really give you a goal to shoot for. It may be that you don't feel ready to put this audio out into the public yet, but it means that you've got a goal to shoot for, and that can help motivate you on your way. You can do things like using out of copyright public domain books. Things like Sherlock Holmes is a great example, where you're not going to enter into copyright infringement or get in any trouble for doing something like that, and distributing it to people that you know. Another way to do practice is by doing things like improvisation groups, joining amateur dramatic societies, finding groups on like Discord or Twitter where people get together on Zoom calls or Discord calls where they just do workshop stuff. You can also find online platforms where people join in workshops and workout groups where you all act together and try out different scenes, and you can hear how other people approach different roles and approach voice acting and go, oh, that's interesting, maybe I'll try that out next time I'm auditioning for a project, or I'll try that out next time I'm reading for something, and you can learn in that way. Then you go on to doing things like practice with a coach in a class setting when you're educating yourself on voice acting. So that practice goes on further, and it goes even further than that. It means that every single time you audition for a role as a voice actor, you're still practicing. So when you audition for a role and submit it, it's not necessarily about getting that role. By auditioning and sending it off, auditioning is the job. And it is practice, and it means that every single time you do an audition, you've been acting, you've been trying to create the best audio, you're sending off your best audio, and you've done it, boom, it's sent off. It's like a Stinger missile, you fire it off and you forget about it. It either hits the target or it doesn't. That's not really the point. The point is that you're becoming a better actor by doing the auditions, by practicing your craft, and by putting yourself out there. Practice also means having good practice, which also means having good health practice. Not only do you want to do things like looking after your voice at the end of the day is your instrument, so you want to make sure you hydrate. By hydrate, I don't mean drinking a pint of water before you start your recording session. I mean every single day, hydrating. Hydration takes a while to seep into the body, to get to the mouth environment, to keep your mouth lubricated, and that's what's going to keep down on various pops and clicks and smack noises in your mouth. People talk about eating green apples, but that's a sort of a last-minute fix, not a good practice thing to do in advance. Good practice is you want to be hydrating constantly and getting ahead of the game in that way. So trying to drink 1 liter or 2 liters of water every single day. It also means, and I know I might get boozed for this, but things like maybe not drinking as much alcohol or caffeine or smoking. And it sounds extreme, but it really does help, again, with your vocal health, with your instrument, your craft. At the end of the day, if you're taking yourself seriously, you want to be doing these things so that when you get called on to perform, that you can perform to the best of your ability. I'm not saying don't do any of these things. I'm just saying all things in moderation, maybe. Don't boo me, please. Another part of good practice and good health is also good mental health. In terms of being self-employed, you're having to drive yourself, you're having to motivate yourself, you're having to be your own boss. It's not just the performance aspect, it's also advertising yourself, advocating for yourself, looking after yourself, and that can be a mental health struggle as well. So it's making sure you surround yourself with the people who cheerlead you on, that you cheerlead they on, having a good support network, not being too hard on yourself, and not being overly critical on yourself, which is easier said than done. And things like having that mentality of an audition being sent off and then it's out of your hands, it's up to the casting director, not up to you or anything that you've done. You're either right for the role or not. Then dealing with rejection is easier. And dealing with rejection is part of the job, because often you will send off an audition and hear absolutely nothing, or if you do hear something, it might be them saying, sorry, we didn't pick you. And you can either take that personally or just go, okay, well, I'm sure they picked the right person for the job and it just didn't happen to be me. I presented a role and it wasn't necessarily the right role for the job, and that's okay, on to the next one. And it's by having that perspective, that mentality towards the job and protecting yourself mentally that you can go on to do more in this field, industry. So, in the vein of practice, I've got a few practice exercises up here that we can kind of give a go. I was thinking about getting a few people to volunteer for these things, but I think the microphone back and forth thing is going to eat into a lot of our time, so I'll just guide you through a few things here. So we'll start over to the left. The sentence on the top left here, I never said she stole my money. This is a really good exercise to do. There's 7 words in the sentence. The emphasis you put on each of the 7 words changes the meaning of the sentence. So I never said she stole my money means that that's not something that I said. I never said she stole my money means that somebody else might have stolen that money. I never said she stole my money might have mean that I gave her the money. And I never said she stole my money means that maybe she stole my heart. It's like the more emphasis you put on each of these words, the more it changes it. And that's really important in terms of when you get a script, especially if you're cold reading a script, that you've been given last minute of, okay, here's the job, here's the script, away you go, or we've made last minute changes to the script, here you go, and it's just like, being able to practice to be agile, to change the meaning of what's being said depending on the context of the scene, depending on what's happening in the scene and what you're doing as an actor is really important. So being able to exercise those skills is really good for that. The second example on the left is same for that as well. She told him that she loved him. You can put only in between each of the words. She only told him that she loved him. She told him only that she loved him. She told him that she loved only him. And again, these kind of exercises are meant to get your brain working, get you exercising your ability as an actor to change the way things are said. Sometimes you get given scripts which are translated and sometimes not in the best way. Sometimes they ask you to ad-lib scripts in order to make them more natural to your voice. And so having this ability to pivot, to switch, to change the meanings depending on the context, and to change depending on what the other actor has given you is really useful in those contexts. And obviously tongue twisters. Warming up before you start voice acting every day is really, really useful, not only in terms of doing scales like may, things like that. Just doing basic scales can really help warm up your voice, get your vocals going, get you more aware of the tonality of your voice. But doing things like tongue twisters can really get your tongue loosened up, your mouth loosened up, so if you get tricky copy, especially if you're doing things like science fiction or fantasy, where you get unusual word pronunciations you're not used to, and you want to make them sound natural. You can do things like the 33 thieves thought that they thrilled the throne throughout Thursday, or the brisk brave brigadiers brandished broad blades, blunderbusses and bludgeons, balancing them badly, which I didn't do a very good job on that one, but you get the idea. But what you can also do is, bear with me, I'm just going to take a little drink to be able to do this properly. You can then also do things like practicing rolling your R's, which is another great way to warm up to this. I'm going to try this. The brisk, brave brigadiers brandished broad, bright blades, blunderbusses and bludgeons, balancing them badly. So yeah, rolling your R's, doing that, and giving a bit more of a dramatic read and things like that. Again, it's all warming up, practice, and a great way to get ready before you start your work day or whatever copy you're reading for that time. Onwards from that, you got practice going down. You're doing voice acting every day. You're standing in front of whatever microphone, your phone, whatever you have. But what do you actually need to get started? What equipment do you need? What software do you need? Now, I could do an entire hour-long talk about this subject in isolation. So I'll just go over some brisk ideas. The person you're seeing on the screen here is Leah Schreiber, who's an actor who's been in various things like X-Men Origins Wolverine and The Manchurian Candidates. And as a voice actor, he was in Into the Spider-Verse, which is the animated Spider-Man movie that did the rounds recently and everybody loved it. But yeah, really talented Hollywood actor. And you can see here he's got a microphone set up with a laptop, and it's just a little like blanket covering temporary setup in a hotel room. And he's still delivering professional quality audio. Now, that's a very expensive microphone. It doesn't have to be that inexact. But my point is that you can get started within a budget. Off to the right here, you've got things like the Rode NT1, the Focusrite Scarlett Solo, which is an XLR microphone. XLR is the type of cable used to plug in that microphone. An audio interface, so that's the technology that's taking your audio signals and turning them into digital signals for your computer to use. And that's sort of a classic combo. The Rode NT1 is the first microphone that I bought after having a very, very cheap USB microphone that got me started in the industry and actually lasted me for about 8-9 years of delivering professional quality audio. And I even did AAA games on that setup as well. I've since moved on to a ribbon microphone, which is a far more delicate piece of kit, which is great quality. But to start out with, you don't need to go to that height. You can find bundle deals for things like that. USB microphones is a bit of more of a controversial topic. Some people are like, oh yeah, USB microphones are great. And other people are like, no, they're rubbish. And technically, they're both correct. Things like the Blue Snowball, which a lot of people get to start with, or a lot of people would consider the Blue Yeti a very reasonable starting USB microphone. And the reality is that, yes, you can do work using those microphones, but you're not going to be hitting things like AAA game studios or broadcast television audio, that kind of thing. However, modern USB microphones, things like the Rode NT USB Mini, which is up on there, the Elgato Waves 3, which is used by streamers, it's actually phenomenal quality. The technology has moved on, and so the more expensive tier USB microphones are a lot more viable now. But ultimately, it's a case of what's your budget, what's available, what can you fit in your space, and trying to get the best quality without going, too far. Ultimately, you want to start earning in order to buy things, and then you want to earn more to buy better things and gradually upgrade your business as it goes, because that's just how it is in this business world. Software is a whole nother field in itself. I use the Adobe suite because I also do film editing and music work as well, and some design work on Photoshop. So it pays off for me to get the monthly fee for Creative Commons and get Adobe Audition for voice acting, Premiere for video, and Photoshop for images. However, a lot of people, if they're using Mac, they can just use things like GarageBand, a free program that comes with Mac. Why not? It does the job. It's a good DAW, which is digital audio workstation. But there's also Logic, there's Reaper, there's Audacity. There's so many things out there. Some of them for free, better ones for paid. But ultimately, attitude is a really good part of this as well. It's whatever you find that is of the right quality, the right budget that you can work with. Get good at working with it. Get familiar with it, practice with it, churn out audio, compare your audio to professional audio. How can I improve this? How can I make this better? I would take somebody who has practiced and done lots of work with cheap equipment and cheap software over somebody who has no experience with the most expensive microphone and the most expensive software. Because ultimately the person who has practiced and done their homework with it is going to deliver the better audio. And another thing I would also say is your microphone is just as important as the space you put your microphone in. When we're talking about things like soundproofing, obviously you can get things like foam paneling off the internet, which is okay. It's not perfect, it's not a cure-all. I did start with duvets, with blankets. Initially I had my microphone set up in my front living room, and I had like a drying rack for clothing behind me and put duvets over that, and then I built a pillow fort around my microphone, and it worked really, really well. And I did a AAA studio game doing that, which is nuts. So you can get that kind of quality by starting off with that kind of budget stuff. And yeah, when you start getting a few jobs under your belt, whether they be games or whatever, you can then spend a bit of money to get some sound paneling, to get things like office sound paneling, which is cheaper than voice actor sound paneling, where they just add a couple of zeros on the end of it. Little handy tip for you there. So yeah, you can start small and build. You can start by getting smaller jobs, getting a little bit of money in, and then spending that money to upgrade to get the bigger jobs and enjoy the craft a little bit more. I would also say having your setup all set up, ready to go, is such a huge thing, to not have a barrier in place to what you're doing, to not have something to set up before you start. If it's all set up and you can literally wake up and go, I don't have anything to do today, I'm going to do voice acting, and sit down and go, so helpful to motivate you, to make that easy to get to. In addition, if it's you coming home from work and doing it in the evening in your spare time, it also means you can come home from work and again, sit down and just get some done before you start your dinner. And that really takes a lot of that barrier to entry to getting started out of your hands. I'm aware, obviously, it's a luxury not everybody can have, having a setup all the time, but it's certainly something to take into account if you can. So, onwards from having the equipment, doing the practice, doing the job, where do you get the jobs from? How do you find work? And this also then crosses over in a big way with where do you find talent? Because surprise, surprise, it's all on the same sites. There is sort of tier works to these kinds of sites. There are the free sites, things like Behind the Voice Actor or a Casting Call Club. Casting Call Club is a really interesting one. There's a lot of fan projects on there and small projects or passion projects which may or may not go somewhere. But what I really love about it is that everybody who auditions for a role on Casting Call Club, their audition is put up there so that everybody can listen to it. So it's a really nice thing for you to go along and go, I think I'm auditioning for this role. This is how I would do it, auditioning for it, and then listening to your audio versus everybody else's. Is their audio quality better? Is your audio quality better? Is theirs more loud than yours? Is yours quieter, louder? Is yours peaking and theirs not? Is somebody doing an audition with the TV on in the background? Yes, that does happen. I've had a few of those come in casting. It's been very strange. So yeah, it just means that you can get a sense of the industry at the basic levels as to where people are at and where people are going. So it's an interesting site in that way. Once you start getting a little bit of money through that, there are mid-tier sites, which is things like Star Now, Mandy, There's a bunch of others as well, where you're paying roughly in the region of 40 to 50 pounds per year to be on the site and then be able to audition for roles. The roles aren't as big, they're not as high paying as the big tier sites, but you're not investing as much money and taking as much of a risk. Then of course there are the bigger sites where you are paying something in the region of 500 to, in some cases, 1,000 plus a year just to be on the site and auditioning. This is where it gets tricky. There is no point in being on those sites unless you know you're going to be getting enough work through those sites to be able to pay for it. Then you've also got to start earning money for yourself on top of that. So you're talking about a site that is guaranteed has to be giving you £1,000 a year just to pay off the site fees. And then you're earning on top of that in order to start earning yourself money. Don't do that till you're ready. It's a huge outlay, it's a huge investment, and if you don't get jobs from it, very disheartening. I've done it myself, and I've had a few jobs from it, but not enough to warrant the effort from it. Honestly, a lot of the places where you're going to get jobs is actually going to be things like Twitter, Reddit, forums, Discord groups, referrals from your peers, from your friends, retweets from other people where they're looking for specific type of your actors, and you're like, oh, I see that completely. I've got friends of mine in Toronto where they are looking for specifically Toronto local actors, and every time I see one of those listings, I ping it off to them, and they're like, oh, thank you so much, and when they see something in my area, they ping it back to me, and I've got networks of people now, communities, peers, people that you can respect who have similar ethoses to you, who can share that kind of information, and that's where community plays a huge, huge impact in voice acting, and also in casting. Because you'll find yourself being cast for a voice acting role in a video game, and then they go, oh yeah, we're just looking for these other 7 roles. I'm like, well, I know someone who can fit every single one of those 7 roles. And in fact, I've got this roster of about 40 friends of mine in the industry who'd be able to audition for all of them. They're like, great, send it along to them. And suddenly they're getting auditions from 40, 50 voice actors with no work put in, no effort put in. So casting directors, talk to your voice actors, let them know what you need. Because quite often you'll find a lot of voice actors will have other people who are peers who are in voice acting. Another thing to look at is sites where you've got things like workshops, workout groups, obviously things like Discord's great for that. A big one I put up on here is Skills Hub. So Skills Hub was actually formed by Jennifer Hale, and I see you voicing Jennifer Hale. I was like, Jennifer Hale, like, yes! So Jennifer Hale formed Voice Hub along with Bill and Karen, and the 3 of them have put together this website. There are workshops on there, workout rooms, there is free coaching sessions. It gives you access to one-on-one coaching with voice actors, including actors like Jennifer Hale, like industry professionals, also things like casting directors, people who work on business marketing, people who work on agencies and agents as well. So it means that you can contact them not just to do classes, because there are classes on the site as well, but you'll find with classes, some of the information is very relevant to you. Some of it's stuff you may know already, but with one-to-one coaching, they look at your specific scenario and let you know where you're at in the industry and what you need to do next on your journey. That kind of guidance has been hugely valuable to me. Jennifer Hale is an incredible coach, but I've also been coached by about 6 other voice actors on that website, and it's been incredible. So websites like that, where there is, I think it's something in the region of £16 per month to be on the site, but that gives you access to all the workshops, workout rooms. There's like interviews on there. There's a really active forum. They do occasionally have casting on that site as well. And at the end of this talk, on the final slide, this is to incentivize you sticking around for the whole talk, there is a discount code, so you get 20% off the first 3 months on Skills Hub if you want to give it a go. Yes, I am a corporate shill. But yeah, things like learning platforms and learning courses that loads of professional voice actors run can help you again on that journey. Fill in the gaps of knowledge that you don't have yet, and really give you that opportunity to grow as an actor, because voice acting is acting, but also in terms of growing your business, because being a voice actor isn't just the fun part of acting, but it's literally being a business owner, promoting yourself, networking, putting yourself out there, putting together a good website. Your website is your shop front for people to buy from you. Your product is your voice. So things like having a good show reel and putting that together. Again, coaches can really help you with that and give you direction for getting the right performance for your show reel. Coaches are actually really good also for booking in for big auditions. Literally, you get given an audition from a AAA game studio, and you're like, oh, I really want to make the best first impression. You book in with a coach for 15 minutes and get them to get that performance out of you, which is really useful. But yeah, having that good social media presence, a strong voice with that, a good following, your work history, your CV, your website, all of that is the paint on your shop front digitally. It's the clean window display on your shop front. It is the product center window display, which is your voice, and selling your voice, your product to casting directors, to people who want to work with you, to agents, which is one of the hardest parts ever. Agents will only work with you if they know that you're going to get jobs. They want the full package. They want you and your best day. They want a show reel that shows you off. They want proof that you can continually get job roles when you audition for them, because they're getting a percentage. They're not getting a flat fee regularly. They're getting a percentage of whatever you make. So they need to know that you book those jobs in order to put the effort into you. So agents is something that you do late game. I've been working in the industry for 10 years. I'm just at the point where I'm approaching agents and giving them all my details to start working with them, because I've needed to prove that I can work well in this industry and continually get roles in order to be worth their time. Agents do hold the keys to bigger roles, things like major AAA game roles and stuff like that. There is a bit of a gatekeep there. Sad but true, but it's like, there's so much to do before there, and literally we are in a hub of indie games where there is no gatekeeping on that, and you can meet lots and lots of indie developers at places like this, which is, you know, kind of why I'm here, to do things like this, but also to do networking. It means I can meet indie developers and go, hey, hire me, put me in your game. So yeah, you've got the acting down, you're finding roles, you're casting actors as well. Where do we go from there? Do we even need voice acting in a video game? Which I know sounds like a terrible question to be asking considering it's my job, but you know, bear with me. So back in the day when video games were created, having voice acting in the games wasn't even possible. It wasn't possible in the programming. There wasn't enough space on the drives to be able to hold the voices in there. And as things progressed, things like the developers just started doing the occasional bit of voice, and it was very compressed, bit-crushy voice noises in the video games. And as things progressed on, suddenly the slightly more talented people in the developing team started doing it, and then they started to hire actors, very low-tier actors, and eventually it's progressed on to now where we've got Hollywood actors in video games, Hollywood composers in video games, we've got Hollywood scriptwriters in video games, and in fact the video game industry is eclipsing the movie industry. The average American household now spends more time playing video games than it does watching TV, which is a huge shift in media, and has happened in such a shorter amount of time than the evolution of TV and film. So video games is one of the fastest progressing and hugely growing industries in the world, technologically wise, which is an amazing statistic and why it's exciting to be at places like this, but be involved in an industry like this. So when you're looking at voice acting in video games, what kind of voice acting do you need? So there's things like silent protagonists, things like Gordon Freeman in Half-Life 3. You've got the Dragonborn in Skyrim and things like that, where they don't really talk a whole bunch. And you're thinking, well, why is that relevant? And that's because it's extremely relevant that the people around the player character have to carry the whole performance. Like, the writing needs to change in order to account for the fact that your character isn't saying anything. The performances need to change because it needs to sound normal and be immersive, and wild children running across the place. It's fine, ignore it, we'll carry on with the talk. Then you've got things like named characters, which is a bit more like a story-driven role, so like Geralt in The Witcher 3, and you've got like James in Silent Hill 2 and things like that, so it's a bit more like a film role. That single character, that single voice actor has to carry a lot on their shoulders. You need to get that casting right in order for the audience to empathize with them, to follow that story, to like that character, because nobody's going to play a game where the main character is the most annoying person on earth unless that's the point of your game and your game is ridiculous, in which case rules kind of go out the window and that's fine. Then you've got player characters, things like Dragon Age Inquisition, or I've got Saints Row with the cat mask up on here, where you need voice actors who typically you need several voice actors so that people can immerse themselves as whatever character they want to be in those games. So things like Saints Row had a ridiculous Cockney English voice, had an American voice, had an aggressive voice, and then had those in both male presenting options and female presenting options. And so not only do you have to write and perform all of the dialogue in those games, you also have to get the main characters to do it all multiple times over. And all the other conversations need to work with every single one of those performances. So the knock-on effect of having multiple voices for this one character with the world revolving around it, the same conversations used to be had in different ways over and over again, but all the other characters' responses still are going to remain the same unless you get the entire cast to do all the voice acting over every single conversation. And that depends on your budget and how much time you've got for development. But thinking about these things when putting actors into your game, when writing your scripts, when putting your game together and saying, how am I going to do this, is really important. I've also got a part on here which is a bit of both, where you've got things like Commander Shepard's a really good example, where no matter how you put your character together, it's still Commander Shepard. The same as Dragon Age 2, your character is something Hawk. And it means that you still have a male presenting voice actor and a female presenting voice actor, but they both, again, still need to work within this context, but they're still portraying a role rather than a sort of nebulous character that can be swapped out for anyone. So it's a little bit of blending of everything. But your lead characters and the people surrounding them aren't the only things. You've also got background characters. Context is really important. And also the word local colloquialism, which I put in this talk mainly because I like saying the word local colloquialism. But local colloquialism would be things like a local saying. If you've heard of a bread roll, you might have heard of it as a bap or a balm or a roll or a bun, depending on where you are, just within the UK, let alone worldwide. And these are local colloquialisms, the way we say things differently depending on your locality. So if you look at things like Assassin's Creed Syndicate, which was set in London, they put a lot of Cockney voices in that game. But it's a case of you need to look at what's contextually going to work. If you end up in something like Cockney London, and then you get somebody with an American accent talking to you, it's like, where has this person come from? What on earth is going on? And it's the same in like various other settings. If you're talking about the way people talked back in the day versus how they talk now, that context changes as well. A really good example of this is the TV show Band of Brothers, where they interviewed a lot of war veterans to find out the way that they spoke back in the day, in terms of the jokes that they told, the things that they found funny, the way they referred to each other. There's a character in that who refers to a lot of his fellow soldiers who he's become very close to as Babe. It's like, hey Babe, how's it going? What's up, Babe? You know, what are you doing, Babe? The idea of modern day American soldiers calling each other Babe would be a little bit different now, out of context. But within the context of how things were at the time, it was exactly how they spoke at the time. It's this kind of attention to detail which keeps immersion, which keeps those roles focused, and which keeps all of those background characters, even those one-sentence lines, in perspective in terms of what you're putting together as a video game. Another way of looking at this is also to do with direction. So in terms of direction, you've got things like the context of the scene. So if you've got a bunch of soldiers walking down the street and there are some very tiny pineapple things on the floor and one of them goes, grenade, that's fine. But if that grenade happens to have been thrown and is missing the pin, they're going to go, grenade! And that's a very different scenario, and a very different acting context, and a very different delivery of the line. So again, the context of the scenario, what is going on in the scene, needs to be communicated. And communication and working with your actor and your director is a street that goes both ways. This is relevant for both directors, casting directors, developers, as much as it is aware for the actor themselves. An actor's worst nightmare is a casting director who is going, yes, I loved what you did, but I want you to make it a slightly more blue and maybe make it a bit more triangle shaped. And it's like, then the casting director's worst nightmare is the actor who can't follow the direction that they're giving. And you can see how these two things can butt heads. So like finding common communication language, common references, trying to work in ways to articulate yourself and describe yourself in both directions is extremely important, because ultimately you're on the same team working on the same project. You both want the game to be amazing and for the player to have the best experience on their life. So work together and appreciate each other in that kind of way. Another thing in terms of direction is looking after the health of your talent. On the screen, you've got Kiefer Sutherland and Gary Oldman, who were in Call of Duty. Obviously, Kiefer Sutherland was also Snake in Metal Gear Solid Phantom Pain as well. And both of them have spoken in interviews and to each other as well about how working on games like that was extremely strenuous on their voices. Gary Oldman, especially as Victor Reznov, the majority of his scenes are in the middle of firefights. So there are guns blazing all around him. And so all of his acting needed to be delivered as shouted lines above the cacophony of machine guns. So he's going, "Follow me, come with me, down the trench," and things like that. And really like giving it a lot of power, a lot of grit, a lot of shouting. And he was saying that these were like, in some cases, 6-hour days of constant shouting. And it was multiple days in a row. So again, this works both ways. Directors need to be looking after the talent and going, you need a break right now, you need to have a drink, you need to relax your voice, to look after your voice. And voice actors need to advocate for themselves and say, I can't keep doing this at this volume and at this power. I need to take a break, I need a moment to recharge, to look after my voice, and to mean that I can continue voice acting without damaging my voice. So, taking those breaks, looking after each other, looking out for each other is an important part of that as well. Onwards from that, I've got a few finishing thoughts to end on, which is about not only in terms of looking after each other as directors and voice actors, but looking after for each other as part of the industry as well. I mentioned earlier about mental health and about support networks, and I think this is a really important thing of looking for people who are like-minded in the industry. Obviously, I'm up here, I'm not actually being paid to do this talk. I'm doing this talk because I believe that the industry can be more. I believe that the industry can be better. If you took a clone of me and put them alongside of me and somehow made me the same age and gave us the exact same accent, we're still not, even though our voices sound exactly the same, we're still not going to give the same auditions to the same copy that we're given. My life experiences will be different to my clone's life experiences. Not that my clones had any life experiences, get off the stage, clone. But my point is that you're not competing with anybody. Nobody's going to audition the way that you audition for that role. Nobody's going to interpret that role the same way that you're going to interpret it. So we're not in competition. Like, lift each other up, look out for each other, boost each other, like cheerlead for each other, and means that people will be cheerleading and lifting you up as well. And it means that the more people we have in this industry, the more legitimate and grown this industry is, the more opportunities that we can then get, the more pathways there are to learning. Things like Skills Hub has only been up for the past year, I think it's been, and that kind of learning platform is very much more recent as the industry grows. And again, video game industry is one of the fastest growing industries in the world right now in terms of technology, so it's useful to have that kind of thing. In terms of mental health as well, it also means you've got people who are backing you up. There are obviously the lucky scenarios where people have family who back them up and support them. Not everybody has that ideal family situation. Not everybody has friends who are into creative media in the same way that you might be. And that's okay. You can find people who are into it in that way. They say we become an amalgamation of the 10 people we spend the most time around. So I think it's important for, if you have people in your life who aren't helping your energy levels, who aren't helping your mental health, to spend the time mostly with the people who are helping you with your energy levels, who are helping you with your mental health and being sensitive to who you are and what you want to become and where you want to go. People who believe in you as much as you want to believe in yourself, and people who you believe in to achieve their goals and look after each other. I'm going to end on that. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming along to watch the talk and for listening to me rabbit on at a higher speed. There's the discount code if you want it. JD Voice will get you 20% off your first 3 months on Skills Hub, which is obviously a useful thing. I am doing the one-to-ones and portfolio reviews just over there behind the stage from 3 till 5, where you can ask me specific questions if you want to, and sort of get me to look or listen to anything that you've done, or just ask me, how do I get started, where am I going, this is what I've done so far, and kind of go from there. Also, tomorrow morning on the community stage, I'm doing a panel talk with Elsie Lovelock, who's another UK voice actor who's incredible and has been in a whole bunch of games as well, where we're going to be talking about our experiences in the industry and what we've been doing there, and regale you with a few stories and take a lot of questions. Again, thank you to Jennifer Hill, thank you to Will and all the guys here at EGX for having me on. And now I will attempt to talk slower and open it up to some questions from all of you. Cheers.
Yeah, amazing. Thanks, JD. Shoot your hand up if you've got a question. Someone must have. Go on. Yes.
Hi, JD. Name's Michael, and my question is the actual colloquial authenticity, I guess. The thing is, this is not my actual voice. Мой настоящий голос звучит вот так. Thing is, from like, I don't know, 6 years old or something, I play video games, and I play video games in English. So just by osmosis, I learn most of it. So my question is there a place for an expat who is fluent in Ukrainian or Russian at the moment, somewhere in the market, or I will like again and again will be just stonewalled by some sorting system or casting agents or something like that? Thank you.
I'm going over there so I can actually hear, just hold on to it for a moment. I'm going over there so I can actually hear what you're saying, because it's difficult to hear behind the speakers. Yes, there is certainly a place for that in the industry. There's two elements to this. First of all, video game localization is a really big part of the industry, where they're taking English video games and translating them into other languages. So people who can speak multiple languages like yourself have a huge niche impact in the industry, where you'll be able to work in multiple languages, which is incredible. There are also obviously voice acting roles in other languages, even within singular video games. You've got things like Call of Duty, where they've obviously had things like various different countries being representative. Not always in the most positive of lights, I will say, but it is still part of the industry. There are also actors who end up doing accents, and you'll especially find there is things like people will be asking for a European accent or an Eastern European accent, which is a bit nebulous. But genuinely, there are a lot of roles for that, and there is a lot of call for that, and for them to be genuine accents. So yeah, even though your accent is Ukrainian, and you can also take lessons in order to improve your pronunciation of English. The fact that you've managed to absorb the amount of English, because your English is fantastic, the fact that you've managed to just absorb that from playing video games already shows that you have a few things. First of all, the ability to learn new languages, the ability to learn new accents, but also you've developed an ear for hearing other accents. Accent work is another thing that I do. Things like Irish accents, Scottish accents, Welsh accents, and things like that. So again, that's another whole talk I could do on accents alone. But yes, there is call for European accents, which is something that you'll be able to do. The fact that you have a good grasp of English means that you can communicate effectively and learn more. Also, it means you'll be effective in things like localization. So if you find the right casting roles, certainly you'll find that. I get messages from things like Star Now and Mandy often, where it's like looking for speakers of Ukrainian or Polish or German or French to do X role, Y role. It's not as common as English-speaking roles, unfortunately. But as things expand, you'll notice that a lot of games, animations, commercials, rather than dubbing over with American accents, they're having the original language in there and instead subtitling it. So there is a lot of call for original language content as well. So yeah, I think there's definitely a space in there in the industry for you. It's just a case of finding the roles, which is certainly not the easiest sometimes.
Sure thing. I mean, last time I've played, how do you call it, Deus Ex Mankind Divided. It's been 8 times I've heard Matt Mercer saying, "I don't deal with crazy Uyobok," right? And aside of like using slur words or cartoonishly sometimes accurate Eastern European accent. What are my chances with competing with Matt freaking Mercer? I mean, literally, they already paid for booth, right? They're like, Matt, here's your booth. You have 4 hours. You've done it in 1, and now we just fill up our schedule with extras of you sounding like a bit more cartoonish Eastern European for other 3 hours. Is there a chance, though?
The short answer is yes. The long answer is more complex. Obviously, there are very established voice actors within the industry. People like Matt Mercer, Nolan North, Troy Baker, Jennifer Hale, Mark Meir, the list goes on. But they don't do work all the time. They have diverse revenue streams. Obviously, Matt Mercer does stuff like Critical Role and is involved not only in terms of broadcasting and being a personality on that, but a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff as well. Matt Mercer's a great example of a really good voice actor and really fun person, and seems like actually just genuinely a very cool dude as well. But yeah, of course there's room to improve. Part of the reason that I believe in continual education within the voice acting world, and again why I advocate for things like Skills Hub and continually learning, is there's always going to be somebody hungry. There's always going to be somebody who wants to be better than you. If you stop learning and go, I'm a good enough actor now, you plateau and somebody else overtakes you. And it's the same thing with all these big voice actors out there. They're amazing at the moment, they're continuing to learn, but there's always the chance that somebody else is then going to come on the scene. There was a time where there was no Matt Mercer, and now there is. And there's nothing to say that any one of us can't become the next Matt Mercer, Troy Baker, Jennifer Hale, or whatever. It's just about working. And again, another lovely thing about this industry is the fact that there is no age cap. I don't need to shave my beard. I can work in my pajamas. It's great. But I can keep working until I'm 90 years old. I mean, I don't think any one of you would complain if Ian McKellen was going to read you a bedtime story. That would be amazing. Or Patrick Stewart wants to introduce the latest game trailer to you. Yes, please. So yeah, there's no cap to this. There's no, a lot of traditional acting, it's like, oh yeah, you better become a famous actor before you're 20 because it's downhill after that. Voice acting doesn't have that. There's no plug to, oh well, you haven't started learning now, so why bother trying? No. Voice acting, you can start when you're 60. You can start when you're 80 if you really want to. You'll get less jobs than when you start earlier, but that's not the point. But you will get jobs, is the point. So yeah, there is always the opportunity and the chance that you can end up becoming the next Matt Mercer. I'm not saying it's guaranteed. You got to work damn hard for it. But if you're willing to put in the work, then hell yeah.
Unfortunately, because of time and our handover, we better call that. Can people nab you as you wander away? Can people nab you as you wander off stage, JD? Or yeah. So maybe we've run out of time for questions for now, I'm afraid. But you might be able to grab him if he doesn't run fast enough.
You can grab me afterwards, or I'll be doing the one-to-ones just around the corner from 3 till 5, so you can talk to me there. Thank you very much.
Let's give him a warm round of applause. That was a great one.